The fluorescent lights of the downtown Chicago police station buzzed with their usual mechanical hum on that humid August evening. Detective Marcus Webb sat behind his desk, his badge gleaming under the harsh white light as he shuffled through paperwork with the mechanical precision of someone who had long stopped caring about the human stories behind each file. 23 years on the force had calcified something inside him, turning empathy into procedure and compassion into protocol. Outside, the city breathed its familiar rhythm. Taxicabs honked along Michigan Avenue. Street vendors packed up their carts. The scent of deep dish pizza mingled with exhaust fumes and the distant promise of rain. It was just another Thursday in the second city, where millions of stories intersected without ever truly touching. Sarah Mitchell hurried down the sidewalk, her worn sneakers slapping against the pavement as she clutched her daughter's hand. Little Emma, only 7 years old, struggled to keep up with her mother's frantic pace. The girl's backpack bounced against her small shoulders, still decorated with the unicorn stickers Sarah had bought her for her last birthday when things were different, when life still held promises instead of just problems. Sarah's dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, revealing the exhaustion etched into her 31-year-old face. Her eyes, once bright with dreams, now carried the weight of too many sleepless nights and impossible choices. She wore her cleaning company uniform, the blue polyester dress that smelled perpetually of bleach and floor wax, no matter how many times she washed it. Her name tag hung slightly crooked, one pin missing from the back. They were late, again. Sarah had promised Emma they would make it to the community center before the art class ended, but her last client of the day had kept her overtime, refusing to pay unless she scrubbed the bathtub twice. $15 extra she desperately needed. $15 that cost her daughter another broken promise. Emma's small hand squeezed tighter around her mother's fingers. The little girl had learned not to complain, not to add to the burden she somehow understood she already was. At 7 years old, she had developed the quiet resilience of children forced to grow up too fast. They turned onto Ashland Avenue, where the streetlights cast long shadows across cracked sidewalks. Sarah's ancient Honda Civic sat parked in front of Murphy's Grocery, the only spot she could find when they had stopped earlier to buy bread and peanut butter with the last $12 in her purse. The car was a rust-colored relic from 2003, held together by duct tape, prayers, and the sheer force of Sarah's will to survive. As she fumbled with her keys, Sarah noticed the parking meter. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Expired. By 45 minutes. No. She looked around frantically, hoping against hope that no enforcement officer had noticed. But there it was, tucked under the wiper blade like a venomous snake. A bright orange parking ticket. $75. $75 she did not have. $75 that might as well have been $75,000. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled the ticket free. The paper felt impossibly heavy. Behind her, Emma tugged at her dress. "Mom, it's okay. We can figure it out." The little girl's words, so mature for her age, broke something inside Sarah. She blinked back tears, refusing to cry in front of her daughter. Not again. Emma had seen her mother cry too many times already. Sarah unlocked the car and helped Emma into the booster seat, buckling her in with practiced efficiency. She slid behind the wheel, inserted the key, and turned. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. She tried again. Nothing. The third attempt produced only a clicking sound that echoed like mockery in the enclosed space. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Sarah rested her forehead against the steering wheel, fighting the panic rising in her chest. She had no money for a tow truck, no money for a mechanic. Her phone had exactly 8% battery left because she had forgotten to charge it the night before while she sat at the laundromat until midnight, washing the week's clothes in the cheapest machines. She took a deep breath and tried the ignition one more time. This time, the engine caught. It rattled and wheezed like an old man with pneumonia, but it ran. Sarah whispered a thank you to whatever God might still be listening and carefully pulled away from the curb. She had driven exactly 3 blocks when she saw the flashing lights in her rearview mirror. Her entire body went cold. The police cruiser sat directly behind her, its red and blue lights painting the evening in alternating colors of authority and fear. Sarah's mind raced. She had not been speeding. Her registration was current. She had made sure of that last month, even though it meant skipping lunch for a week. Her license was valid. What could they possibly want? She pulled over carefully, her hands already shaking as she placed them on the steering wheel in plain sight. She had seen too many news stories, knew too well what happened to people who made the wrong move during a traffic stop. Her brown skin suddenly felt like evidence of a crime she had not committed. The officer approached her window with heavy footsteps. Sarah lowered the glass, trying to steady her breathing. License and registration. Detective Marcus Webb's voice carried no warmth, no curiosity, just the flat tone of someone going through motions. Sarah fumbled for her wallet, her fingers clumsy with nerves. "I wasn't speeding, officer. I don't understand what I did wrong." Webb peered into the car, his eyes scanning the interior with practiced suspicion. He noticed the worn seats, the crack across the dashboard, the child's toys scattered in the back where Emma sat frozen with wide eyes. "Your tail light is out. Left side." Sarah's heart sank further. She had not known, could not have known. When would she have had time to check? "I'm sorry, officer. I didn't realize. I'll get it fixed right away." Webb studied her license with more attention than seemed necessary. His jaw tightened as he looked from the photo to her face and back again. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." "What? Why? I just have a broken tail light. I'll fix it tomorrow, I promise." "Step out of the vehicle. Now." The command came harder this time, with an edge that made Emma whimper in the back seat. Sarah's entire world tilted sideways. This was not how routine traffic stops worked. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She opened the door slowly, every movement deliberate and visible. Webb stepped back, his hand resting near his belt in a gesture that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "Officer, please, I don't understand. What's happening? I have my daughter in the car. She's 7 years old. Please, just tell me what's wrong." "You're under arrest for possession of stolen property." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Stolen property? What stolen property? This was insane. This was impossible. There must be some mistake. "I haven't stolen anything. I'm a cleaning lady. I clean houses. That's all I do. Please, you have to believe me." But the cold metal handcuffs were already clicking around her wrists, each notch tightening like a vice around her future. Emma's cry from inside the car pierced the evening air. "Mommy! Mommy! No!" Sarah twisted to see her daughter's face pressed against the window, tears streaming down her cheeks. The sight shattered what little composure Sarah had left. "Please, my daughter. She can't be alone. Please, she's just a child. Call my neighbor. Her number is in my phone. Mrs. Rodriguez can take her. Please don't take me away from my baby." Webb's expression remained unchanged, a stone wall against which Sarah's pleas broke and scattered like rain. Another officer had arrived, and together they guided Sarah toward the police cruiser. She stumbled, her legs barely holding her weight. Behind her, Emma's screams grew louder, more desperate. The last thing Sarah saw before they placed her in the back of the cruiser was her daughter's small hands pressed against the car window, her face contorted with terror and confusion. It was an image that would burn itself into Sarah's memory forever. A photograph of the moment everything fell apart. The ride to the station passed in a blur of streetlights and shame. Sarah sat in the back of the cruiser, her hands cuffed behind her back, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. What stolen property? She had never stolen anything in her life. She barely had time to buy groceries, let alone commit crimes. The processing room at the Chicago Police Department's District 12 station smelled of stale coffee, sweat, and institutional disinfectant that never quite masked the underlying odor of human desperation. Sarah stood under the harsh fluorescent lights as a female officer removed her handcuffs only to replace them with the humiliation of being photographed like a criminal. Turn to the right. Face forward. Turn to the left. Each command felt like a nail being driven into her dignity. The camera flash left spots in her vision, temporary blindness that felt metaphorical. She could not see a way out of this nightmare. Could not understand how her life had imploded so completely in the span of 30 minutes. Detective Webb stood nearby, arms crossed over his chest, watching the process with the detached interest of someone observing an ant farm. Another case file. Another number in his clearance rate. His partner, Officer Stevens, a younger man with a shaved head and cold eyes, leaned against the wall scrolling through his phone. Sarah's voice cracked when she finally found the courage to speak again. Please, can someone tell me what I'm supposed to have stolen? I have a right to know what I'm being charged with. Webb pulled out a tablet and swiped through several screens before turning it toward her. The image showed a diamond necklace, elaborate and expensive, the kind of jewelry Sarah had only ever seen in store windows she hurried past on her way to work. This necklace was reported stolen 3 days ago from the Pemberton residence on Lakeshore Drive. Mrs. Eleanor Pemberton. Ring any bells? Sarah's mind raced. Pemberton. Yes, she cleaned for the Pembertons. Had been cleaning their penthouse apartment every Tuesday for the past 4 months. Mrs. Pemberton was a wealthy widow in her 70s who collected art and jewelry and treated Sarah like she was invisible furniture. I clean for Mrs. Pemberton, yes. But I didn't steal anything from her. I would never. That woman pays me barely above minimum wage, but I've never taken so much as a paperclip. Webb's expression hardened. Mrs. Pemberton's housekeeper reported the necklace missing on Tuesday evening. You were the only person who had access to her bedroom that day. She reviewed her security footage. You were in her jewelry room for 17 minutes. Because I was cleaning it. That's literally my job. I dust her shelves, I vacuum her floors, I organize her drawers when she asks me to. Of course I was in there. 17 minutes is a long time to clean one small room. It's not a small room. It's bigger than my entire apartment. She has glass cases that have to be cleaned with special solution. She has specific instructions for everything. I follow them exactly because I need this job. Stevens pushed off from the wall, his voice dripping with skepticism. You're a single mother. You work 3 cleaning jobs. You're behind on rent. Your car is falling apart. You've got parking tickets you can't pay. Then suddenly a $50,000 necklace goes missing from a house you clean, and you expect us to believe it's just a coincidence? The calculation in his words made Sarah's stomach turn. They had looked into her life, had seen all her failures, all her struggles, and decided they added up to theft. I know how it looks, but I didn't do it. I swear on my daughter's life. I would never steal from anyone. I work hard for everything I have. It's not much, but it's honest. Webb pulled out another piece of paper, this one a printed screenshot of text messages. These are messages from your phone to a number registered to Marcus Chen, a known fence operating out of Chinatown. Want to explain those? Sarah's confusion must have shown on her face because she genuinely had no idea what he was talking about. I don't know anyone named Marcus Chen. I've never been to Chinatown except to pick up takeout once. Let me see those messages. Webb held the paper just out of her reach, reading aloud. Package is ready. Can you move it by Friday? I need cash fast. These were sent from your number 2 days ago. That's impossible. I didn't send those. Someone must have cloned my number or something. I don't even know what those messages mean. Package? Move it? I'm not some criminal mastermind. I'm a cleaning lady who can barely figure out how to update her phone. The 2 officers exchanged a look that made Sarah's chest tighten. They did not believe her. Not a single word. A 3rd officer entered the room. A woman with sharp features and tired eyes. She carried a clipboard and barely glanced at Sarah. Mitchell, you're being charged with grand larceny and trafficking in stolen goods. Your arraignment is scheduled for Monday morning. You'll be held here until then unless you can post bail, which is set at $20,000. $20,000? Sarah felt the room spin. She might as well have said 20 million. I don't have that kind of money. I don't have any money. Please, I have a daughter. She's 7 years old. She has nobody else. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She can only keep her for a few hours. Emma has school tomorrow. She has her medication she needs to take. She gets anxious without me. Please, you can't do this. Her voice rose with each word, panic overriding reason. The female officer's expression softened slightly, but her words remained firm. Child Services has been contacted. They'll make arrangements for your daughter until this is resolved. Child Services. The words hit Sarah like a freight train. They were going to take Emma. We're going to put her in the system. Everything Sarah had fought for, every sacrifice she had made to keep them together, was about to be ripped away. No, no, please. Not that. Anything but that. I'll confess. I'll say whatever you want. Just don't take my daughter. Webb stepped closer, his voice lowering to something almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. If you confess now, tell us where the necklace is, we can work with the DA to get you a reduced sentence. Maybe probation instead of prison time. Your daughter stays with family or a friend. But you have to tell us the truth right now. Sarah looked into his eyes and saw nothing but certainty. He believed she was guilty. They all did. And in that moment, she understood with terrible clarity that the truth did not matter. The facts did not matter. She was poor, desperate, and brown, and that was all the evidence they needed. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. I can't confess to something I didn't do. I didn't steal that necklace. I don't know where it is. I don't know anything about any messages to any fence. Somebody set me up, or there's been a terrible mistake, but it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Her voice broke on the last words, dissolving into sobs that shook her entire body. The female officer led her away to a holding cell, a small concrete room with a metal bench and a toilet in the corner. The door clanged shut with a finality that echoed in Sarah's bones. She sat on the cold bench and buried her face in her hands. Emma would be terrified, would be crying for her mother, would not understand why the police had taken her mommy away. Mrs. Rodriguez was kind but elderly. She could not handle a traumatized 7-year-old overnight. Hours passed. Sarah lost track of time in the windowless cell. Other women came and went, some loud and angry, others quiet and defeated. Sarah remained silent, her mind circling the same impossible questions. Who had set her up? Why? How had someone sent messages from her phone? Then she remembered. 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Pemberton had asked to use Sarah's phone to make a call because her own battery had died. Sarah had handed it over without hesitation, grateful that her employer was even acknowledging her existence. Mrs. Pemberton had stepped into another room for privacy, had been gone for maybe 10 minutes. Could she have done something to the phone then? But why would a wealthy widow frame her own housekeeper? It made no sense. Nothing about this nightmare made sense. Around midnight, the cell door opened again. Webb stood there, his expression harder than before. You've got a visitor. Someone's here asking about your case. Sarah looked up, hope flickering despite everything. Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez had found a lawyer. Maybe someone who believed her had come to help. She was led down a corridor to a small interview room. The door opened and Sarah froze. The man sitting at the metal table was not a lawyer. Not Mrs. Rodriguez. Not anyone she had ever seen before. He wore an immaculate charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in a year. His dark hair was slicked back, revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. His hands, folded calmly on the table, bore a single ring on his right pinky, gold with an insignia Sarah could not quite make out. The man looked at her with an expression somewhere between curiosity and assessment. When he spoke, his voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who had never been told no in his life. Sarah Mitchell, sit down. We need to talk about who's trying to destroy you, and more importantly, why I'm going to make sure they fail. Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, her legs refusing to move. Detective Webb gave her a slight push forward, not rough but insistent, then stepped back and closed the door behind her. She heard the lock click. The sound felt ominous, trapping her alone with this stranger whose very presence seemed to command the room. Sit. It was not a request. The man's voice carried an authority that made Sarah's body obey before her mind caught up. She lowered herself into the metal chair across from him, her hands instinctively moving to her lap where she twisted her fingers together nervously. Up close, she could see more details. A scar along his jawline, barely visible but there. Cufflinks that caught the light, small diamonds set in platinum. A watch that whispered wealth in every precise tick. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Dark, calculating, but not unkind. They studied her the way a chess master studies a board. "Who are you?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended, barely above a whisper. The man leaned back in his chair with the casual ease of someone who owned every space he entered. "My name is Vincent Moretti. You don't know me, but I know quite a bit about you. Sarah. Single mother. 3 jobs. Behind on rent, but never more than 2 weeks. You worked at Sacred Heart Elementary School for 6 years before budget cuts eliminated your position as a teacher's aide. You loved that job. You were good at it. The kids adored you." Sarah's breath caught. How did he know these things? Who was this man? "Since then, you've been cleaning houses, working overnight shifts at a grocery store, doing whatever it takes to keep your daughter fed and clothed. You've never been arrested. Never been in trouble. You don't drink. Don't do drugs. You're exactly the kind of person who doesn't steal $50,000 necklaces. Then why am I here? Why do the police think I did it?" Vincent's expression hardened, a flash of something dangerous crossing his features. "Because Eleanor Pemberton wanted you here. Because her nephew, Bradley Pemberton, needed someone to take the fall for his gambling debts. And because dirty cops like Detective Webb are very good at making innocent people look guilty when the price is right." The words hit Sarah like ice water. She shook her head, unable to process what she was hearing. "That doesn't make sense. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm nothing to these people." Vincent leaned forward, his hands flat on the table between them. "That's exactly why you're vulnerable. You're desperate. You have no resources, no powerful friends, no way to fight back. In their eyes, you're disposable. Bradley Pemberton stole that necklace from his aunt to pay off his debts to some very dangerous people. He sold it through Marcus Chin. But Eleanor noticed it was missing faster than he expected. So he needed a scapegoat, someone who had access, someone whose phone he could use to send incriminating messages, someone the police would believe was desperate enough to steal." Sarah felt sick. The room seemed to tilt around her. "Mrs. Pemberton let him use my phone. 3 weeks ago. She asked to borrow it." Vincent nodded slowly. Smart woman Eleanor, in her own twisted way. She knew something was wrong but couldn't prove her nephew was involved. "So when the necklace went missing and Bradley suggested you might have taken it, she went along with the story. Family loyalty. The Pembertons protect their own, even when their own are rotten. But the police, Detective Webb, why would he go along with this without real evidence? Because the Pemberton family donates generously to the Police Benevolent Association. Because Webb is 2 years from retirement and doesn't want to rock any boats. Because he's been doing this job so long he's stopped seeing people like you as human beings. You're just another statistic. Another case file he can close quickly and move on." Sarah's hands were shaking now. Anger was replacing fear, hot and righteous in her chest. "So what happens now? They just get away with ruining my life? They take my daughter and I go to prison for something I didn't do?" Vincent's smile was cold, predatory. "Not if I have anything to say about it. And I have quite a lot to say about it. Why do you care? Why are you here? I don't understand what any of this has to do with you." Vincent was quiet for a moment, his fingers tapping a slow rhythm on the table. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight Sarah could not quite identify. 3 years ago, my sister was in a situation similar to yours. Different circumstances, but the same basic story. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong people decided she was expendable. She went to prison for 18 months before the truth came out. By then, her daughter, my niece, had been in foster care. The trauma of that separation, the injustice of it all, it broke something in both of them. My sister was released, but she was never the same. She died 2 years later. Heart attack, the doctors said. But I know better. They killed her spirit long before they killed her body. Sarah's anger softened into something more complex. She saw the pain flash across Vincent's face, quickly masked but unmistakable. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to your family." Vincent waved away her sympathy with one hand. "Don't be sorry. Be ready to fight. Because that's what we're going to do. We're going to fight these people with everything we have, and we're going to win. How? I have no money for a lawyer. I have nothing. They have everything. Vincent reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Sarah picked it up. The name embossed in silver read, Michael Torres, attorney at law. Below it, an address in one of Chicago's most expensive districts. Torres is the best criminal defense attorney in the city. He owes me several favors. Starting tomorrow morning, he'll be representing you. He'll file motions to suppress evidence, challenge the arrest, demand discovery on every piece of supposed evidence they have. He'll make their lives very difficult. Sarah stared at the card, afraid to hope. I can't afford someone like this. You're not paying. I am. Consider it an investment in justice. Something I don't get to do often enough in my line of work. What is your line of work? Vincent's smile returned, enigmatic. Let's just say I'm in the business of solving problems. Sometimes those problems are people who think they can destroy the innocent without consequences. The Pembertons are about to learn a very hard lesson about who they chose to make an enemy. If you're hoping that Vincent will save her, take this moment to subscribe to the channel. This story is just beginning to heat up, and you won't want to miss what happens when the powerful realize they've made a terrible mistake. Sarah felt something stirring in her chest, something she had not felt in years. Hope. Real, tangible hope. But what about Emma? They said child services is coming. They're going to take her. Vincent checked his watch, a smooth motion that suggested he had timed this entire conversation precisely. Emma is currently with Maria Rodriguez, your neighbor. Mrs. Rodriguez has temporary emergency custody, arranged by my lawyer about 2 hours ago. Your daughter is safe, fed, and knows you're coming home soon. She's scared, but she's not alone. Tears spilled down Sarah's face, but for the first time that night, they were tears of relief rather than despair. How did you even know about all this? How did you find out I was arrested? Vincent stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. I make it my business to know things, Sarah, especially when those things involve injustice happening in my city. Chicago has enough real criminals without the police manufacturing fake ones to close cases and satisfy rich donors. He walked to the door and knocked twice. It opened immediately, revealing not Detective Webb but a different officer, one Sarah had not seen before. This man looked at Vincent with something approaching fear. Mrs. Mitchell is free to go. All charges are being dropped pending further investigation. Her personal effects will be returned immediately, and someone will drive her home. Sarah stood on shaky legs, unable to believe what she was hearing. I don't understand. How is this possible? They said I'd be here until Monday. They said my bail was $20,000. Vincent turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Things change quickly when people realize they've made mistakes. Detective Webb received some new information about his case. Information that strongly suggests he arrested the wrong person. He's currently in his captain's office explaining how he plans to find the real thief. It's not going well for him. Did you threaten him? I didn't have to. I simply reminded certain people of certain facts they had overlooked. The truth has a way of being very persuasive when presented properly. Sarah wanted to ask more questions, wanted to understand exactly who this man was and what power he wielded that could make the police reverse course so completely. But exhaustion was crashing over her in waves, and all she could think about was holding her daughter. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough. Vincent paused at the door. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. The Pembertons will try to salvage their story. Bradley will look for another scapegoat. And there are people in this police department who don't like being made to look foolish. You're going to need protection for a while. My people will be watching your apartment, making sure nobody tries to intimidate you or worse. Your people? Vincent's smile was dangerous now, all teeth and shadows. I have a lot of people, Sarah, and they're very good at what they do. Nobody is going to hurt you or your daughter. You have my word on that. He left before she could respond, his footsteps echoing down the corridor with the confidence of a man who owned the ground he walked on. Sarah stood alone in the interview room, her mind reeling from everything that had just happened. 15 minutes later, she was signing for her personal effects. Her phone, her keys, her wallet with its pathetic $7. The officer processing her release would not meet her eyes. Nobody would. They all moved with the jerky efficiency of people who knew they had made a terrible mistake and were desperately trying to minimize the damage. The Uber driver who took Sarah home said nothing during the 20-minute ride, perhaps sensing that she needed silence more than small talk. Sarah stared out the window at the city she had lived in her entire life, seeing it differently now. Every corner held a new weight. Every streetlight illuminated not just pavement but possibility and danger in equal measure. When they pulled up to her apartment building, a modest 3-story walk-up in a neighborhood that teetered between working class and forgotten, Sarah noticed immediately that something was different. A black sedan sat parked across the street, too clean and too expensive for this block. Inside, she could make out the silhouette of a man watching. One of Vincent's people, she realized. The protection he had promised. Mrs. Rodriguez opened her apartment door before Sarah could even knock, as if she had been waiting by the entrance. The elderly woman's face crumpled with relief, and she pulled Sarah into a fierce hug that smelled of garlic and lavender. "Mija, thank God. I've been praying every rosary I know. That little girl upstairs has been asking for you every 5 minutes." Sarah pulled back, wiping at her eyes. "Is she okay? Did she eat? Did she take her anxiety medication?" "She ate half a sandwich and some apple slices. I gave her the medicine from your apartment, the bottle you keep in the kitchen cabinet. She's scared, Sarah, but she's strong. Like her mama." Sarah squeezed the older woman's hands. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you. That lawyer who called, the one who arranged everything, he paid me for watching Emma. $500, Sarah. I tried to tell him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted. Said it was for any trouble I might have in the future." "Who is this man?" Sarah shook her head. "I'm not entirely sure, but I think he might be an angel, or maybe a devil. I haven't decided yet." She climbed the stairs to her own apartment on the 3rd floor, each step feeling heavier than usual. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the nightmare at the police station was fading, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion. Emma met her at the door, launching herself into Sarah's arms with such force they both nearly fell. The little girl's face was streaked with dried tears, her eyes red and swollen. "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. I thought they took you away forever. I thought I'd never see you again." Sarah held her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the rapid beat of her small heart. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Promise." They stood like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in the doorway of their tiny apartment. Eventually, Sarah carried Emma to the worn couch and sat with her daughter curled in her lap, stroking her hair while Emma's breathing slowly returned to normal. "What happened, Mommy? Why did the police take you?" "There was a misunderstanding. Some bad people told lies about me, but it's being fixed now. Everything is going to be okay." "Are they going to come back?" Sarah thought about Vincent's promise, about the man sitting in the black sedan outside their building, about the lawyer whose card was still in her pocket. "No, sweetheart. They're not coming back. We have friends now. Friends who are making sure nothing bad happens to us." Emma looked up at her mother with those wide, too knowing eyes. What kind of friends? The kind who don't let bad people win. Over the next 3 days, Sarah's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. Michael Torres, the attorney Vincent had provided, was a force of nature. Tall, intense, with the kind of sharp intelligence that could cut through lies like a scalpel through tissue, he worked with ruthless efficiency. He filed motion after motion, flooding the prosecutor's office with demands for evidence disclosure. He challenged the legality of the traffic stop that had led to Sarah's arrest. He questioned the chain of custody for the supposed text messages. He demanded access to Mrs. Pemberton's security footage, all of it, not just the selective clips the police had reviewed. And most devastatingly, he produced phone records that proved Sarah's phone had been cloned. The messages to Marcus Chun had come from a duplicate device, one that had been activated the same day Mrs. Pemberton borrowed Sarah's phone. Torres also had bank records showing large cash withdrawals from Bradley Pemberton's account that coincided perfectly with his mounting gambling debts. The case against Sarah collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. But Vincent was not satisfied with mere exoneration. He wanted vindication. He wanted blood. On the fourth day after Sarah's arrest, she received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, Vincent's smooth voice filled her ear. "Turn on Channel 7 News. Right now." Sarah grabbed the remote and switched on the small television that had come with the apartment. The new news was just beginning. The anchor, a polished woman with perfect hair, spoke with barely contained excitement. "Breaking news this afternoon as Chicago police have arrested Bradley Pemberton, nephew of socialite Eleanor Pemberton, on charges of grand larceny, fraud, and conspiracy. Sources say Pemberton stole a valuable necklace from his aunt and attempted to frame an innocent woman for the crime." In a related development, Detective Marcus Webb has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into misconduct during the case. The screen showed footage of Bradley Pemberton being led from his luxury apartment in handcuffs, his face pale and drawn. He looked nothing like the confident young man whose social media photos showed him at clubs and galas. He looked like exactly what he was, a desperate fool who had made catastrophic choices. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the phone. "You did this. How did you get all that evidence so fast?" Vincent's voice carried a hint of amusement. "I told you, Sarah. I'm very good at solving problems. Bradley Pemberton had a lot of people who were tired of his behavior. It just took the right pressure in the right places to get them talking." As for Detective Webb, let's just say his supervisors were very interested to learn about his cozy relationship with the Pemberton family's charitable foundation. "What about Mrs. Pemberton? Is she being charged too?" There was a pause on the line. Eleanor Pemberton is 82 years old and claims she had no knowledge of her nephew's plans. Whether that's true or not, she's untouchable. Old money, old connections. But her reputation is destroyed. She'll spend the rest of her life knowing the entire city sees her as either a willing accomplice or a foolish old woman who was manipulated by her own family. For someone like her, that's punishment enough. Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, vindication, but also a strange sadness for the waste of it all. What happens now? Now you rebuild. Torres is filing a lawsuit against the city for wrongful arrest and against the Pembertons for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. You'll receive compensation, probably significant compensation, enough to never have to worry about parking tickets or broken taillights again. I don't want their money. I just want my life back. Vincent's voice softened. Sarah, that money isn't a gift. It's what you're owed. They tried to destroy you to save themselves. They put your daughter through hell. You take every penny they have to give and you use it to build something better. You hear me? Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks, but she was smiling. I hear you. 1 week later, Sarah stood outside Sacred Heart Elementary School, her hand in Emma's as children streamed through the front doors. The principal, Mrs. Chan, a kind woman who had cried when budget cuts forced her to let Sarah go, had called her personally. "We have an opening for a teacher's aide position. Full benefits, better pay than before. If you're interested, the job is yours. We never should have let you go in the first place." Sarah had accepted immediately. Now, watching Emma skip toward her classroom, no longer carrying the weight of fear and uncertainty, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The constant anxiety that had been her companion for years was loosening its grip. Not gone entirely, but manageable now. Bearable. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. "Check your bank account." Sarah pulled up her banking app, then froze. The settlement from the city had come through. $250,000. More money than she had ever imagined having. Enough to breathe. Enough to dream again. Another text arrived. "Use it wisely. And remember, you're not alone anymore." She wanted to text back, to ask him why he had really helped her, what he wanted in return, who he truly was beneath the expensive suits and calculated words. But she suspected he would not answer those questions. Some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved. That evening, Sarah and Emma sat at their small kitchen table eating pizza, something they could now afford without counting pennies. Emma chattered excitedly about her day at school, about the art project she was working on, about the friend who had invited her to a birthday party next weekend. Sarah watched her daughter's animated face and felt a fierce gratitude that threatened to overwhelm her. They had survived. They had been pushed to the very edge of destruction and had somehow found their way back. A knock at the door interrupted Emma's story. Sarah looked through the peephole and saw a delivery man holding a large envelope. She opened the door cautiously. "Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes. This is for you. Sign here, please." Sarah signed and took the envelope. Inside was a letter on heavy cream paper, the kind that whispered of wealth and power. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. "Mrs. Mitchell, I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. My nephew's actions and my own willful blindness nearly destroyed an innocent woman and her child. While I cannot undo the damage done, I hope you will accept this as a small gesture of contrition. The property deed and keys are enclosed. No strings attached. You deserve a fresh start in a place where bad memories cannot follow you. Eleanor Pemberton." Sarah's hands shook as she pulled out the documents. A deed to a 3-bedroom house in Oak Park, a good neighborhood with excellent schools, paid in full, and a check for $50,000 for moving expenses and furniture. Sarah sat at the kitchen table long after Emma had gone to bed. The deed and the check spread before her like artifacts from someone else's life. She traced her fingers over the embossed lettering, half expecting it all to vanish like smoke. But the paper remained solid beneath her touch, as real as the tears sliding down her cheeks. Park. She had driven through that neighborhood once, years ago, when she still dreamed of things beyond survival. Tree-lined streets, Victorian houses with wraparound porches, parks where children played without parents watching them with the constant vigilance that came from living in dangerous areas. Good schools, safe streets, a life that had seemed as distant as the moon. Her phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Vincent's name appeared on the screen. She had added his number after their second conversation, though she still did not fully understand why he had chosen to intervene in her life. "You got the package." It was not a question. Somehow he always seemed to know things before she could tell him. "I don't know what to say. This is too much. The settlement was already more than I ever expected. And now this. Eleanor Pemberton is trying to buy back her conscience. Let her. That house is in one of the best school districts in the area. Emma will have opportunities there that she'd never get where you are now." Sarah looked around her tiny apartment, at the water stain on the ceiling she had stopped noticing years ago, at the locks on the door she had installed herself after a break-in 2 floors down, at the bars on the windows that made her feel like she was living in a cage. "I've lived my whole life in this neighborhood. All my memories are here, good and bad. Exactly, good and bad. Your daughter deserves a place with only good memories. New ones that you build together. Take the house, Sarah. Don't let pride or fear hold you back." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had been gnawing at her for days. "Why did you really help me, Vincent? And please don't tell me it's just about your sister. There's something else. I can feel it." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Sarah thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she had not heard before. "My sister's name was Maria. She was 5 years older than me. When our parents died, she raised me. Worked 3 jobs just like you. Sacrificed everything to make sure I had food, clothes, a chance at something better. When she was arrested for something she didn't do, I was 17 years old. Too young to help her. Too powerless to fight the system that chewed her up and spit her out." He paused, and Sarah heard him take a breath. "I swore that day that I would never be powerless again. That I would build something that could protect people like Maria. People like you. The world is full of Bradley Pembertons and Marcus Webbs, people who think they can destroy the innocent because nobody will stop them. I stop them. That's what I do. That's who I am." "You're not just a businessman, are you?" Vincent's laugh was dry, humorless. "No, Sarah. I'm not just a businessman. I'm a lot of things, some of them not very nice. But when I see someone being crushed by people who have too much power and no conscience, I use everything I have to even the scales. You don't need to know more than that. You don't want to know more than that." Sarah understood. Vincent Moretti was not a hero from a fairy tale. He was something more complicated. Something that lived in the gray spaces between legal and illegal, between justice and vengeance. But he had saved her and Emma when no one else would. That was enough. Thank you, Vincent, for everything. I'll never be able to repay you. You already have. You fought back. You didn't break. You kept believing you deserved better. That's all I needed to see. Now go build that better life. And if you ever need anything, you have my number. The line went dead before Sarah could respond. 2 months later, Sarah stood on the porch of her new house in Oak Park, watching Emma chase fireflies in the backyard as the summer evening settled into twilight. The house was a beautiful old Victorian painted in shades of cream and sage green. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with an island, hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places. A home, not just a place to sleep. Emma's laughter rang out, pure and unself-conscious, the sound of a child who no longer carried the weight of adult fears. She had made friends at her new school, was thriving in her classes, had stopped waking up crying in the middle of the night. The trauma of that terrible day was fading, replaced by the steady accumulation of peaceful, ordinary moments. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Michael Torres. Final settlement came through from the Pemberton estate. Additional $175,000 for emotional distress. Check being mailed today. Sarah closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of freshly cut grass and jasmine from the garden she had planted last month. $425,000 total. Life-changing money. Money that meant security, education, opportunity. Money that meant Emma would never have to wonder if they could afford groceries or if the lights would stay on. But more than the money, more than the house, Sarah had gained something she had lost somewhere along the way in all those years of struggle. She had gained herself back. The parts of her that had been slowly eroded by exhaustion and fear were rebuilding. She had started taking a painting class at the community center, had made friends with her neighbors, real friends who invited her to cookouts and book clubs, had begun to imagine a future that extended beyond just surviving until tomorrow. The lawsuit against Detective Marcus Webb had resulted in his early retirement, though no criminal charges were filed. Sarah had mixed feelings about that. Part of her wanted him to face real consequences for what he had done. But another part, the part that was learning to let go of bitterness, understood that he would have to live with his choices. That was its own kind of punishment. Bradley Pemberton had pled guilty to grand larceny and fraud, receiving a sentence of 5 years in prison. His lawyer had tried to argue that his gambling addiction was a disease that warranted treatment rather than incarceration, but the judge had been unmoved. Too many lives had been impacted by his selfish choices. Eleanor Pemberton had retreated from public life entirely. Her name, once synonymous with Chicago high society and philanthropy, was now associated with scandal and shame. Sarah had heard through Michael Torres that the old woman spent her days alone in her penthouse, estranged from what remained of her family, a cautionary tale about the cost of protecting those who did not deserve protection. Sarah felt no satisfaction in Eleanor's downfall, only a distant sadness. The whole situation had been such a waste. So much pain inflicted, so many lives altered, all because a spoiled young man could not face the consequences of his own poor decisions. Emma ran up to the porch, her jar full of captured fireflies glowing like tiny stars. "Mommy, look, I caught 17. That's amazing, sweetheart. Now what do we do?" Emma's face grew serious, the way it always did when she was thinking about something important. "We let them go. They're too beautiful to keep in a jar." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with pride and love. "You're absolutely right. Come on, let's set them free together." They walked to the middle of the backyard, and Emma carefully unscrewed the lid of the jar. The fireflies rose into the darkening sky, their lights blinking in patterns that seemed almost like gratitude. Mother and daughter stood hand in hand, watching until the last light disappeared into the trees. A car pulled up in front of the house, sleek and black. For a moment, Sarah's old instincts kicked in, her body tensing with learned wariness. But then she recognized the vehicle. Vincent. He stepped out wearing his usual immaculate suit, somehow looking completely at ease despite the casual suburban setting. Emma, who had met him once before when he had stopped by to check on them, waved enthusiastically. "Mr. Vincent, did you come to see our new house?" "I did, Emma. and it's even more beautiful than I imagined. Emma grabbed his hand with the unselfconscious friendliness of children who have not yet learned to judge people by their exteriors. Come see my room. I have a window seat where I can read and everything. Vincent allowed himself to be pulled inside, catching Sarah's eye as he passed. She followed them in, listening to Emma's excited chatter as she gave him the grand tour. When they reached Emma's bedroom, painted in soft lavender with white furniture Sarah had carefully chosen, Vincent took his time looking at everything. The books arranged on shelves, the art supplies organized in colorful bins, the stuffed animals arranged on the window seat Emma had mentioned. This is a wonderful room for a wonderful girl. You must be very happy here. I am. And Mommy is happy too. She smiles more now. She doesn't cry in the bathroom anymore. The words, delivered with such innocent honesty, hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had thought she had hidden those moments from her daughter, those times when the weight became too much and she locked herself in the bathroom to break down where Emma would not see. But children saw everything, knew everything. Vincent knelt down to Emma's level. Your mom is one of the strongest people I've ever met. She went through something very hard, but she never gave up. She kept fighting for you. Do you know how lucky you are to have her? Emma nodded solemnly. I tell her every night, in my prayers. I thank God for my mommy. After Emma was tucked into bed, Sarah and Vincent sat on the porch with glasses of iced tea, watching the street settle into nighttime quiet. Porch lights flickered on up and down the block. Somewhere nearby a dog barked. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. You didn't have to come all the way out here. A phone call would have been fine. Vincent sipped his tea, his expression contemplative. I wanted to see for myself that you were really okay, that this all worked out the way it should have. Thanks to you, it did. Thanks to you, Sarah. You're the one who had the strength to accept help. A lot of people in your situation would have been too proud or too scared. You were smart enough to take the opportunity and run with it. Sarah studied his profile in the dim light from the porch lamp. Are you always going to be watching over us? Is that man in the black sedan ever going to stop parking on our street? Vincent smiled slightly. The protection will continue for a few more months, just to make sure there are no surprises. After that, you'll be on your own. But you have my number. If you ever need anything at all, you call me. Day or night. Understood? Understood. They sat in companionable silence for a while. Two people who had been brought together by circumstances neither would have chosen but both had survived. 3 years later, Sarah stood in front of her classroom at Sacred Heart Elementary School, watching 23 third graders work on their art projects with the focused intensity that only 8-year-olds could muster. She was no longer a teacher's aide. 6 months ago, after completing her teaching certification through night classes at DePaul University, she had been promoted to full-time art teacher. The irony was not lost on her. She had once cleaned houses to survive. Now she taught children to create beauty, to express themselves, to believe that their visions mattered. Life had a strange way of coming full circle. Through the classroom window, she could see the playground where Emma, now 10 years old, played with her friends during recess. Her daughter had grown tall and confident. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail just like Sarah used to wear, but without the weight of worry that had always accompanied Sarah's. Emma laughed easily now, a sound that never failed to make Sarah's heart swell. The transformation in both of them had been gradual but profound. The first year after everything happened had been difficult. Nightmares, anxiety, moments when Sarah would see a police car and feel her chest tighten with remembered fear. But therapy had helped. Time had helped. And the security of knowing they were finally truly safe had helped most of all. Sarah had invested the settlement money wisely, following advice from a financial planner Michael Torres had recommended. Most of it was in trust funds and college savings accounts for Emma. Some had gone to home improvements and a reliable car that started every single time she turned the key. The rest sat in savings, a cushion against disaster, a promise that they would never again be one broken taillight away from catastrophe. Her phone buzzed during her lunch break. A text from an unknown number. Turn on the news. Channel 7. You'll want to see this. Sarah recognized the terse style immediately. Vincent. She had not heard from him in almost 2 years, Not since he had stopped by the house one last time to tell her the protection detail was ending, that she was truly free to live her life without looking over her shoulder. She pulled up the news on her phone and felt her breath catch. The headline read, "Federal investigation concludes in massive corruption scandal." Below it, a familiar face stared out from a mugshot. Detective Marcus Webb, looking decades older than when Sarah had last seen him, his expression a mix of defiance and defeat. She turned up the volume on her phone. The news anchor spoke with barely contained excitement. Today marks the conclusion of a 3-year federal investigation into corruption within the Chicago Police Department. Former Detective Marcus Webb, along with 6 other officers, has been indicted on charges including bribery, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. The investigation, which began with an anonymous tip in 2025, uncovered a pattern of misconduct spanning over 15 years. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she held the phone. The anchor continued, "Sources close to the investigation say Webb and his associates received payments from wealthy individuals and organizations in exchange for favorable treatment in criminal cases. Multiple wrongful arrest cases are now being reviewed, with several individuals expected to receive compensation and exoneration." The screen showed footage of Webb being led into a federal courthouse, his wrists cuffed, reporters shouting questions he refused to answer. Sarah felt a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. Justice, even delayed, still mattered. Another text from Vincent, "Told you I'd make sure he faced consequences. It just took a little longer than expected. How are you?" Sarah typed back, "We're good. Really good. Thank you for never forgetting." His response came quickly, "Never forget the people worth remembering. Give Emma my best." That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table grading papers while Emma did homework beside her. The house smelled of the lasagna baking in the oven, a recipe Sarah had finally mastered after numerous attempts. Through the window, she could see their small garden blooming with late summer flowers, tomatoes ripening on the vine. "Mom, I need help with this math problem." Sarah looked over Emma's shoulder, explaining the concept of fractions in a way that made Emma's face light up with understanding. These moments, so ordinary and precious, were what she had fought for without even knowing it. The right to be bored sometimes, the luxury of helping with homework, the blessing of routines that were peaceful rather than desperate. Her doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence. Most of their friends texted before coming over. Sarah opened the door to find Mrs. Rodriguez standing there, older and frilier than she had been 3 years ago, but with the same warm smile. "Maria, I was in the neighborhood visiting my grandson and thought I'd stop by. I hope that's okay." "Of course. Come in, please. We're just about to have dinner. You'll join us." Over lasagna and salad, Mrs. Rodriguez told stories of the old neighborhood, of people Sarah had once known who had moved away or passed on. The building where they used to live had been torn down, replaced by a modern development with rents triple what Sarah had been paying. "Sometimes I miss those days," Mrs. Rodriguez said, then paused and corrected herself. "No, that's not true. I miss the people but not the struggle. You've done good, Mija. Look at this life you've built. Your mama would be so proud." Sarah's mother had died when she was 19, too young to see her daughter become a mother herself, too soon to witness either the darkest or brightest moments of Sarah's journey. But Sarah liked to think she was watching somehow, seeing that her daughter had survived, had thrived, had turned pain into purpose. After Mrs. Rodriguez left and Emma was in bed, Sarah sat in her home office, a small room she had converted from what had been a storage space. On the walls hung photographs chronicling their journey. Emma as a toddler, Sarah's first day at her new teaching job, the two of them in front of their house on moving day. A picture of Sarah receiving her teaching certificate, Vincent standing in the background of the shot, present but never seeking attention. She opened her laptop and began typing an email she had been composing in her head for months. It was addressed to the Chicago Community Fund, a nonprofit organization that helped single mothers in crisis. The email outlined her proposal to establish a scholarship program for mothers seeking higher education, funded by an anonymous donation she was prepared to make. $50,000 to start. Money that would change lives the way her life had been changed. She was about to hit send when another email arrived. The sender was listed simply as VM. Vincent Moretti. Sarah had not even known he had her email address, though by now she should not have been surprised by anything he knew. The email was characteristically brief. Heard about your scholarship idea. Good instinct. I'm matching your donation. $50,000 from my foundation. Don't argue. Some battles you can't win. Sarah laughed, tears pricking her eyes. She typed back, "Thank you. For everything. For then. For now. For always." His response came within minutes. "You did the hard part. I just opened a few doors. The walking through them was all you. Be well, Sarah Mitchell. You earned every bit of happiness you have." She wiped her eyes and hit send on her email to the community fund, the match donation making it $100,000. Enough to help at least a dozen women begin the climb out of poverty and desperation. Enough to be a lifeline for mothers who felt as hopeless as Sarah once had. 1 year later, Sarah stood on a small stage at a community center on the south side, facing an audience of women who looked exhausted, scared, and determinedly hopeful. The first recipients of the Mitchell Moretti Scholarship Fund sat in the front row, 12 single mothers who had been selected from hundreds of applicants. She cleared her throat and began to speak, her voice steady despite her nerves. 4 years ago, I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. I was a single mother working 3 jobs, barely keeping my head above water. I had no resources, no powerful friends, no reason to believe things would ever get better. I was exactly where many of you are now, looking at a system designed to keep you down and wondering if fighting back is even possible." She paused, meeting the eyes of women who understood, who had lived their own versions of her story.